Hello friends, I am Shelley Clough, and today for our project we are going to make these darling bookmarks that are sort of a galaxy and a sunset sky. I will walk you through all the steps to make these. So let's go ahead and dive into our supplies. All right, so for supplies today, we are going to be starting. I've got my starter palette here. You can see all the colors in this linked below. I also sell these full palettes on my website if you want to use exactly what I'm using. I have a half a sheet of Canson XL watercolor paper. So this is normally 9 by 12. I just chopped it in half, so now it is 6 by 9. I have a roll of 1-inch artist tape, and I'm going to be starting out with my size 8 Princeton Neptune brush. Any supplies that I'm using, I will link in the description box below. I'm also going to be using some white gouache today. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tape this sheet into two separate kind of windows. So I'm going to take my tape and adhere it to all four sides. Okay, now once I have adhered the tape to all four sides, I am going to put a strip right down the middle so that this is going to give me two bookmarks at the end. I'm just sort of eyeballing the middle. If they're not exactly the same size, that's going to be fine. And then I'm just making sure to run my fingernail along all the edges of these seams to make sure my tape is super secure so that I get those nice crisp lines and then it holds my paper nice and taut. Okay, so now the reason I like to do two at a time with this is whenever we're doing a landscape, there's always drying time involved between layers. And when we do two, then we can just keep working by switching back and forth between the two. We're going to start with kind of our galaxy sky. Okay, so my first step here, this is not totally essential, but I think it's going to make things easier for me. I'm just going to take a bunch of water and wet this whole surface. That's going to help my colors just move around better. The key to a nice blended sky is working quickly enough that all your colors are able to merge with each other. So for a galaxy sky, I want it to be darker around the edges and then sort of colorful in the middle. So I'm starting with indigo, and I'm just going to take that around the very edges of my paper here. And I'm just sort of wiggling my brush a little so I get some kind of organic movements happening. It's not just a straight line. And I'm just going to go all the way around. We're going to paint some really dark stuff on bottom, so it's all going to get kind of covered up. So I'm going to just work some of that indigo color around, making sure to really build up the edges because I want the very edges to be the darkest. So I'm just kind of going straight into the pigment to get that onto my paper. So now that I have my edges, I'm going to switch over to Prussian blue and just kind of go along the edges of that indigo that I laid down. I don't need to do that everywhere. And I want here to sort of wiggle that color around. So as I move that color, and I'm not going to worry too much about the bottom down here. I'm just going to sort of smooth it out. That way I can paint on top of it later. So I'm just dropping a little bit of that Prussian blue here and there to sort of let it blend with each other. And if I see any areas kind of really starting to puddle, I'm just going to sort of work my brush over that and mix it up. So now that I have that, I am going to come in with this opera rose color. So it's a really bright pink, and I'm going to drop that right into these empty spots in the middle. So right now I don't want to touch the blue. I am just dropping it into the empty spots, and that's going to make sure that I have that really fun pop of pink before I start, potentially creating any purple. Now I'm going to come and mix in a little bit of quinacridone magenta to that, and I'm going to start wiggling that kind of along those edges where the blue and the pink meet. And I'm going to create these little kind of tendrils coming in and out, almost like little snakes, sort of smushing my brush down to create some wiggly shapes here. This is going to be one of those things that looks really fun when it's dry. Right now it's kind of at the strange stage. I'm going to grab a little bit more Prussian blue and sort of work some of that again on these edges. Just kind of eating into that middle section a bit. Okay, so now this is looking kind of crazy, but we are going to let it dry while we come over here. And over on this side, we're going to do more of a traditional sunset. And again, I am going to wet this paper. And my water right now is a little bit purple, but that's fine. It's all just going to work out in the end, so I'm not worried. So I'm just going to wet the whole thing. And on this one, I'm going to start with cadmium yellow on the bottom. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to leave just this bottom section a little bit empty. And just grabbing that cadmium yellow and sort of swirling my brush around. So you can see I'm just doing these little wiggly, swirly motions to sort of get some of that movement. And so what I want to do is sort of fading the yellow up. And then I'm going to come into this quinacridone magenta, start on top with that. So I'm going to go really nice, concentrated on top, just sort of swirling my brush around. Okay, so sort of swirling that quinacridone magenta into the yellow. Now I'm actually going to mix those two colors on my palette really quick to get some of that orange and help that orange sort of merge in the middle. And now what I want to do is I'm going to take a clean, damp brush and I'm going to just lift a little bit here and there, kind of to give the look of clouds in a sky here. Just kind of tapping my brush around. A little bit of like a back and forth, just creating some texture there. Okay, I think I'm feeling good about that. And you see how this one is drying over here and it's looking really neat now. So I'm going to run my heat gun over this so it dries all the way so that we can move on to step 2 of our first bookmark. All right, now that this side is dry, I am going to switch over to a smaller brush. So I just have a size 4 here by Da Vinci, and I am going to add some little evergreen trees down here at the bottom, kind of giving like a northern lights sort of vibe. So I'm going to go in straight to Payne's Gray here, which is like a super dark, dark blue, almost black color. And I'm just going to get a really concentrated mix of that. So you can see I'm dipping my brush in the water several times, really wetting the paint that's in my palette and creating a puddle that is quite opaque, because these trees need to be dark enough to show up on top of this quite dark sky that we've already created. So I feel like that's pretty dark. And now what I'm going to do is create kind of a little mountain. I'm going to come and make some wiggly lines down this way and then come up this way and do the same thing. Just kind of some wiggly lines, maybe a little higher. And I'm just going to fill that whole thing in with this blackish color. And just make sure it's nice and concentrated so that you're not going to see any of the sky kind of showing through below. What we're doing here is creating a silhouette against the dark sky. Okay, so there is kind of my little mountain scene, and now I'm going to start adding some tiny little trees. So again, taking that brush, making sure I've sort of swiped it off so I don't have any droplets hanging on my bristles, because on my trees I want to be really precise. I'm going to make some skinny little lines here, even if they're dotted, that's okay. And then we're going to sort of tap our brush back and forth, making little zigzags for our trees, okay? And you're just going to let them fade right into your little mountain that you've created. And we're going to do another one kind of up here. And notice I start a little ways from the top and I taper gradually as I come down. So it's a little smaller on top and a little bit wider on bottom. You just want to make sure you're leaving some gaps between the little pieces that you're laying down. You want to be able to see that sky showing kind of through the branches of the tree. And you can make different sizes of trees. So I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller down here. That way it helps create some depth. Maybe there's some trees in the background. This one I'm going to have be really little right here. So it looks like that tree is kind of far away in the distance. And then one over here. And you can let them go right off the side of the bookmark. That just helps it look like, you know, it's a part of a scene. It's not, you know, sometimes it's hard for us to let the painting go off the page, but it's okay to do it. I think I'm going to add one more kind of up close to this one here. Just kind of letting that little tapping, sort of zigzag motion go back and forth. Okay, do a little bit more down here. I think that's looking nice. Now here it dried just a little bit lighter. I'm just going to fill that corner in so it stays nice and opaque down here at the bottom. And now I'm going to add some stars to this sky. So I want to avoid putting the stars on my trees. You can also do the stars before your trees, but you'll just need to wait for the white gouache to dry before you paint the trees. But that's totally an option too. So what I'm going to do is just grab some scratch paper, sort of set it down here, and then I'm going to grab some of my white gouache. So I have this little dish here. I'm going to squeeze some gouache into there. I like using gouache fresh out of the tube for this because then it's a little more opaque. And for my stars, I'm going to use my bigger brush. I'm going to swirl that in some water. What I want to do is create a nice puddle of white. Kind of load up my bristles, and then I'm going to tap my brush off. And what this does, it's going to make our splatters nice and tiny so they look like stars. Oh, you know what? I almost forgot to cover this side as well. Okay, so I'm going to just tap on my finger here. Look at those cute little stars. Just tapping all over that sky to create a little look of stars. And I'm just going to angle it like this, 2 papers, so I can fill in stars in that little midsection here. Okay, now we're going to lift these off. Look how pretty. Okay, that is so fun. So we're going to let that finish drying while we come back over here to this side. I may need to run. Actually, you know what? That's pretty dry. Okay, so now that we've got our fun sunset happening over here, I thought it would be fun to do more of a palm tree on this side. Shake it up a little bit. So I'm going to come here into this Payne's Gray again. So we're just sticking with that same silhouette idea where everything looks dark against our bright sunsetting sky. And for this one, I'm going to do more of a smooth look that sort of comes up on this side, so it gives like that sandy island vibe. And again, just taking a really thick layer of that Payne's Gray and painting on that bottom section here. And I've just switched back to my little size 4 brush for this. For filling in this part, you could use a bigger brush, but I'm just using my size 4 for all of the black sort of pieces. Okay, and now I'm going to do a little palm tree. So I'm going to come back into this Payne's Gray, and I'm going to come on this side that's lower. I'm going to make sort of a curved line up like this. And then little flicks, maybe about 4 or 5 little flicks like that. And then just tiny little bits sort of hanging down. Just little bits coming off of those branches. Okay, and I'm going to do one more. I think I might do one more a little bit higher. I'm going to make one that comes sort of way up here, cut into my sky a little bit. And then do again, just some little curves coming off that main stem. And then kind of some little curved flicks hanging down off those branches. Okay, I think that is pretty cute. So we're going to let these totally dry, and then we will take off our tape and chop down the middle to make sure that our bookmarks are separated. Okay, I have these all dry now, and I can peel off my tape. One thing that's nice is when I use the heat gun, it actually loosens the adhesive on my tape and it peels off much cleaner. And I always pull at a 45-degree angle, so I don't pull straight down, I pull off to the side, and it helps it avoid ripping my paper. Okay, so I have a couple little spots where some of that liquid leaked out. What I'm going to do, this is a portion of a magic eraser that I've cut into triangles, so it has a nice sharp edge on it. And I'm going to use that magic eraser to just gently lift at that spot. So I just grab a clean corner until it's all the way lifted. I just spritz a little water on that. Okay, so that feels a lot better, and now I'm going to get out my paper trimmer. Okay, so here is my favorite paper trimmer, and I'm just going to set my bookmarks in here, and I'm going to try to cut down the middle of these two sections. All right, there we have it. Two really fun landscape bookmarks that you can try at home. I hope you had fun with this tutorial. If you give these a try, I would love to see how your work turns out. You can tag me on Instagram, or I have a Facebook page that you can join called the Watercolor Playground. You can find the details for that in the description box. But thank you so much for watching, and we will see you all in the next video.